What is up, most distinguished patrons of this channel? Today we are going to look at a 3-year review of the Miller Dynasty 210 that I bought, well, roughly 3 years ago. And we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and what my final thought is on this machine. So let's get into it. So it's pretty crazy that basically the first video on this channel was actually on this welder and how it didn't work out of the box, and that was never my intention on starting the channel off a video like that. And I just did it because I was frustrated, and honestly I was so excited to get this thing because it was kind of like my dream welder, and to not have it work out of the box, well, shit happens, right? Anyways, I've been using this sucker for the past 3 years and I have a lot of opinions on it. And I know the ins, the outs, I know what it's good at, what it's not good at, what the problems are, and I thought I would share them with you and give a final opinion after 3 years of use with it. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering. So I prefer to start out on a high note on the good. So we're going to look at what I think the good aspects are of this machine. The first thing I will say is that universally this is an exceptionally good welder. And what I mean by that is, like with TIG welding, the arc quality is impeccably good. It's basically the best of the best when it comes to arc control. And for those of you who don't have a lot of TIG welding experience, it can be difficult to understand the difference between maybe this and maybe a cheaper Amazon or Harbor Freight welder. The best way I can describe it is if you ramp up or down the amperage with the foot pedal, the way the arc responds is so seamless and so clean. It's just, you could call it perfect. It is unbelievably good. When you do custom fabrication of especially thin material, having that absolute perfect arc control really matters, and it's so good on this. It's basically easily the best of the best out there. It'd be hard to say something's better than this. So that arc control, perfect. Another great thing that was somewhat unexpected but great is that the stick welding capability of this machine is basically exceptionally good. I've had numerous people that have stick welded with it, and every one of them have complimented how good it is at stick. The 6010 runs very clean, very smooth, crispy. Whatever you want it to do, it does. And 7018 is just, it's perfect. So the stick welding is very good. And that's something that's really hard to get in an inverter machine. Switching gears here, the layout of the software and how well it works overall is very good. It's pretty intuitive. There are some drawbacks to it, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But the software works really good. And one of the things you guys got to understand is, to a large extent, going to an LCD screen with push buttons is kind of going to be the way the industry goes with welders, simply because there is so much adjustability that it just makes sense. It's more efficient. I was a huge fan of the Dynasty 210 that predates this, with the red LED numbers and no LCD display. That was a very good, reliable machine universally. The problem with that is a lot of the features that it was capable of doing were hidden in hidden menus where you had to hold buttons, and it just, for the amount of features that this has, because there are some upgraded things in this over the previous generation for control, it just doesn't make sense anymore to use knobs and switches or more simplistic displays, because it's too complicated to use and to adjust all the parameters. The overall build quality of it seems to be pretty good. I have had issues with the reliability. That, again, and we'll talk about that in a bit. I haven't had like terminals break off. I haven't had any issues with the foot pedal, which this does not come with the foot pedal, but I have the wireless controller with it. I don't have any issues, like mechanically speaking, and that's something I have found with some welders, mainly cheaper ones, is that like stupid things like DINS connectors spin, and now you have to take the case apart to tighten a nut inside. A very common one is where the gas hooks up for a TIG torch will loosen the nut up inside, and now you have to take it apart to tighten that because you can't tighten or loosen the gas fitting anymore. And that's why I generally use quick connects on my machines, so that I'm not constantly taking that off. Switching gears, the efficiency of this is very good, and that matters to me because I do a lot of work on a 7600 watt running generator that's pure sine wave. I wouldn't want to run this on a dirty power generator, stick with like an inverter generator. Another thing that I really have grown to like is the fact that they put a handle on this. The previous one, they got rid of it and you only had a carry strap, and when you got a 40+ pound brick like this, a carry handle goes a very long way to actually cart this thing around. And trust me, I wouldn't want to make a habit out of actually using this mobile. It's simply too heavy, too cumbersome, and let's face it, too damned expensive to risk breaking on some kind of drop or something. But the carry handle is a must-have, and I'm glad they brought that back. They should have never eliminated it on the previous welder. Since I got this powered up, it reminded me something else I really like about this machine and most other higher end machines at that, and that is it has fan on demand. This machine does not run a very loud fan at max output all the time like many cheaper welders. Now the fan on here has an odd pitch to it, and the digital control of it, more or less it has speed control, can be somewhat fidgety, like it ramps up and down inconsistent, and that can be a little bit annoying, but for the most part, it doesn't run, so it's not really a big concern. Coinciding with that fan, I want to make a mention of the duty cycle of this machine. I have not actually had this trip out on overload on duty cycle, and I've done a lot of AC TIG welding out in the field at max amperage for like 10-15 minutes. Going back to the software, for the most part, it does work really well. It's very intuitive. So right now we're on the main home screen and we're in DC TIG, but let's say we want to switch to AC TIG. You just scroll up, hit the button, go back home. Now we are switched over to AC mode. Very easy to do. And this gives you full control over all aspects of the AC, which is pretty awesome. Like you can go under AC wave and you have your frequency, your balance control, and you can even change on the AC wave with this machine, whether or not it's square, triangle, or what's the term? Let me pull it up here. Sine wave, that's it. Soft, square, sine. You have all the control over all of the waveforms. To switch it back to DC, you just go over here and we're in DC mode, and now it's switched over. One of the awesome things is that it keeps all of the settings separate for one another. So all of the settings you like for AC will be preloaded in there when you switch over to AC. And then all the settings for DC are saved. So that's awesome. And you can also create programs and store it to memory. I find that a little bit cumbersome to use, but you can. And for the most part with TIG welding, I don't see that as a huge benefit. It's more of a benefit for wire, in my opinion, because there's so many more variables that actually matter, and you don't have like a foot pedal to control things. So the memory feature on this, big deal. Hey, it's there if you want it. So everything I've covered so far are the pluses, and there's a lot to like. Let's talk a little bit about the bad. So when it comes to the bad, there are some weird quirks with this software that I don't like. And if you're used to like a well-polished software, like say an Apple iPhone, maybe you would understand when you switch to something else that's just janky, written in China. Not that this is that bad, but you kind of get an idea of what I'm saying. And a great example would be something as simple as I want to go to DC TIG. So I go up here and I hit DC TIG. So it changed color, which is awesome, and I know that I'm in DC TIG, but now I have to hit an additional button to have it go here. I don't understand why when you select that, it doesn't just go to the home page. And I find there's a lot of menus in here that are like that, where you have to hit, and then you do like 2 button presses rather than, they could have just done it in one. And I wish they would have simplified that. It would be a little bit easier and less annoying to use. Likewise, the gas control, so you can adjust pre-flow and post-flow for TIG to reduce or increase your gas. And it took me a while to find that because I was expecting it to be over here. Well, you have to go under menu, and the first time I looked at this, I didn't see it. Well, there it is at the top, gas, and somehow it's here. I think that they could have put the gas control somewhere I guess better labeled. Again, this is kind of nitpicking, but I find it odd, and it took me a while to figure that out. So I think that they kind of missed the mark on that. Another thing that they kind of missed the mark on is the polarity of this machine. And I had talked about this in an original video or videos that I did on this machine, and that is nowhere in the manual or on the machine does it tell you that this has automatic polarity switching. So no matter what you're doing, your ground clamp goes in this, that shows a ground clamp, and your stinger or TIG torch goes here. The problem is that it doesn't say that anywhere. So when I first stick welded with this, I switched the leads thinking I had to manually do it, but anytime you're in stick mode, this becomes positive. Anytime you're in TIG mode, that becomes negative. So it's really nice it does that. It's just there was no mention of it, and that could be confusing for a lot of people because you probably are going to end up stick welding on the wrong polarity. So that stuff was a little bit nitpicky. Let's talk about something that didn't meet my expectations that is less so, and that is the arc starter in this machine. And what I mean by that is in here, and I'll go to DC TIG, high frequency start. And the arc starter, I think it's under tungsten. So this machine has complete ability to adjust the arc starter based on tungsten diameter. In theory, if you set it for like 1/16 tungsten, it will give all the parameters for this starter to work ideal for that diameter tungsten. So the starting amperage, all of that. What I have found is that universally on DC, sometimes when it tries to start the arc, it has like, it'll pop the arc and it kind of fizzles a little bit. And then as you increase amperage, the arc will start properly. So it's kind of like, almost like the tungsten isn't sharpened properly or there's some kind of resistance. And I've tried this with 2 or 3 different TIG torches. I've tried it with different diameter tungstens, different grind angles, and universally it just does not start as crisp as many other Miller machines I've owned, like the Miller Maxstar 161 STH I used to own, or the Fronius battery-powered machine, and well, granted, that's lift arc. A lot of other machines that I've owned that did high-frequency start, it's just not as good. And one of the cool things is you can actually go under general on this and do all controls yourself. So you can change the starting polarity, the starting amperage, the start time, the slope time. Literally, you can create your own arc starter program. And I have found that creating my own has netted better starts, but it still is not as good as what I think it should be. So that kind of covers the bad, I guess. Let's talk about the ugly. The number one thing, and really the only thing I have to say about the ugly end of things with this, is the projected reliability and issues I've had with this machine. As I had mentioned earlier, and as was in a couple previous videos, this machine didn't work out of the box, and it had a loose ribbon cable, or well, a ribbon cable that I believe was never hooked up from the factory, and it got shipped out, whatever. You know, shit happens, right? Since that original issue, I have had a couple other issues pop up, and I never talked about it on the channel, so here it is. And the first issue is about a year after this was purchased, they came out with a software update, and they said, hey, you probably should do this. So I downloaded it, put it on a thumb drive, and something told me not to upload it onto this machine because I had a couple jobs to do, and it just seemed like the perfect situation where I'd upload it, it would brick it, and then it wouldn't work, and now I'm out money. And no BS, after I finished some jobs, I uploaded the update, it said successful, and next thing you know, it completely bricked this thing to where it wouldn't work. I called Miller, and they said, well, we hate to tell you, you need to bring it into a service center. They weren't willing to send me any software on a flash drive or anything to try and reinstall it, like hard, wipe it and reboot it. So I ended up having to bring this into a service center, and it sat there for a week or two, got fixed, and then I got it back. So, well, at least they're able to fix it, but exactly what I was afraid of actually happened, and I know that I can't be the only one, and it's really unfortunate that that happened. Not soon after that update was installed on this, I started to have weird glitching with the rotary encoder here. And I had contacted Miller, which, by the way, their help service is second to none, very good. And talked to him about it, and they said, well, the rotary encoder must be bad. And what it was doing was, as I rotated this up and down, it would jump by 20 to 40 amps. It became very difficult to control amperage, and the faster you went, the more it would go backwards. So it was screwed. And that issue was going on for a year and a half or so. And I decided recently, because the warranty's about up, that I would go and take it in for service to have that fixed because, well, you know, no warranty means big money to fix it, and it's an annoyance. So I took it in recently. As a matter of fact, I just got this back today. And after having it for 2 weeks, they said, well, we can't replicate the problem, so there's not really anything we can do. And so what I'm going to do is weld with this, take a video of it doing it, and then talk with the service department at the local welding store again and see if I can't actually get that fixed. What's funny to me is that weird glitch, like it's not doing it now, and this thing was in for service. Maybe they updated the software and it took care of it. I thought I had the most recent software in it, but what's weird to me is it seems like it's working slower than it normally does, but that really didn't, it left a bad taste in my mouth, I guess, on the reliability of this. So that's kind of not good. So in conclusion, what do I think of this and would I buy it again? Well, the answer is as follows. I think it's an exceptionally good TIG welder. It has a great TIG arc. The AC end of things gives you all the control that you could possibly want. The negatives are kind of an issue for me because like that arc starter, like I said, considering the price of this machine, it's high enough that to me that's unacceptable, and that is a pretty bad drawback. No, does it really matter for majority of things? It really doesn't. The biggest issue for me with this machine, and maybe it's just me being a little bit jaded, but for what this costs, the projected reliability from what I've seen is not very good. I'm going to be honest, every service center that I've talked with, including the one that looked at this to try and fix the rotary encoder, has kind of given me the opinion that in the last 3 years, Miller, the quality of their stuff is not as good. They've been seeing a lot of repairs, and not only that, the attitude of most repair shops around here is throw it out, get another one. And to me, I get that. When you're buying high-end stuff, it's like a BMW. You sell it before it breaks because that's the next guy's problem. The problem is, though, this is a welder. This isn't a BMW. And when you're charging 2 to 3 times as much than, well, not really comparable, but competing brands for something like this, it better be damn good and it better be reliable because, you know, if you're only getting 1,000 hours out of something like this, at some point, even big companies are going to start questioning whether or not it's worth it. And in the case of the company I work for that has had numerous, they have 2 engine drives in for repair and a stick welder right now, all Miller products that are virtually new that failed at very low hours and are all in for repair right now. To me, like these companies that are buying their products are going to start backing off and saying, you know what, we need to look at alternatives because this junk just isn't lasting. And it's unacceptable at the price range that these things are run at to have that, I guess. And so I guess my final thoughts on this is among, I would easily say in North America, top 2, top 3 TIG welders out there. There is no question. This is up there. It's just the reliability question is too great to not overlook. I guess my final opinion is if you want one of these, buy it new under warranty. If you're buying it used, you better be paying well under half a new or it's just flat out not worth it. And if you want a very high-end machine, this will do it for you. And the last thing I'm going to say is the 210 Dynasty is kind of an enigma machine. And what I mean by that is most people will spend the money on this for the AC capability because DC is DC. You don't need this expensive of a machine to get quality DC. The AC end of this thing is almost not worth spending this much money because this doesn't have the ability to weld really thick material, and all of the adjustability on AC is mainly to help with thinner material, not so much thicker. And with aluminum welding, you really need amperage more than you need fancy settings. So if you're looking at doing a lot of AC work, I would suggest looking at a 250 to 300 amp plus capable machine with less settings than this, than going with this that has ultimate control because it's not really that beneficial in my opinion. Anyways, if you got any thoughts to share or opinions on this, feel free to leave them. Otherwise, until next time.